Some people are loud about their pain. They cry in hallways. They argue. They slam doors. They let the whole world know what is happening. And somehow that loudness makes sense to everyone around them. It gives people something to respond to, something to hold, something to try to fix. But Maya was not like that. Maya Ellison was 16 years old. She lived in a regular town, went to a regular school. She walked the same streets and sat in the same classrooms, hundreds of other teenagers her age. From the outside, there was nothing unusual. A quiet girl, dark eyes, a worn backpack, a seat at the back of every classroom. But Maya had not spoken in 5 years. Not one word, not at school, not at home, not even to the relatives who called on birthdays and waited hopefully on the line. The silence had started when she was 11, the way a light dims before it goes out, and then all at once, completely. It was like a switch someone had simply turned off. After a while, the silence stopped feeling strange. It became her only way to exist. She carried a small notebook in her backpack everywhere. That notebook was her voice. If a teacher asked a question, she wrote the answer. If someone stopped her in the hallway, she pointed or wrote or simply shook her head. She was good at moving without a sound. It was almost impressive, if you were the kind of person who looked closely enough to notice. Most people were not. The school had adjusted around her. Teachers accepted written answers. The system had bent itself into a shape that fit her, and everyone moved on. Most of her classmates had stopped noticing her entirely. And in a strange, private way, Maya preferred it exactly like that. Being noticed meant being waited on. Being waited on meant being expected to give something. And that was the one thing she couldn't do. The only person who never made her feel invisible was Lena Park, her desk neighbor in English class. The one person who decided Maya was her friend. Lena talked enough for the two of them. She gave Maya full daily updates on everything, without ever pausing to wait for a verbal response. She had learned to read Maya's face like a second language. The small twitch at the corner of Maya's mouth meant something was funny. A slow blink meant she was thinking it over. A quick sideways glance meant she disagreed, but decided it wasn't worth the energy. And the rare, quiet shine in her dark eyes meant she had been genuinely moved. That shine was the closest thing to Maya's real voice. And Lena had learned over time to treat it like something precious. The house on the edge of town sits in a pool of fading light, a quiet observer of a life that has slowed to a standstill. Diane Ellison watches the steam rise from her tea, but her mind is miles away, lost in the echoing silence of a kitchen that once felt full. Every corner of the home holds a piece of what they've lost. Maya's room is a fortress of quiet, filled with books that try to explain grief. Night falls, and the shadows grow longer. The future feels like a vast, empty road, and Diane wonders if they will ever find their way back. It wasn't always this quiet. There was a time when Sunday mornings were filled with the warm, rolling melodies of Robert's piano. Young Maya didn't just listen. She felt the music. To her, the vibrations through the wood were a secret language shared only with her father. But the music stopped on a gray morning in March. Sudden, final. The world turned cold, and the melody was replaced by the rhythm of rain. The Yamaha stood in the corner, a silent monument. Diane couldn't bear to touch it, and Maya seemed to have forgotten it even existed. Weeks turned into months. One evening, after the house had settled into its usual hush, a door clicked shut. Maya sat on the worn bench, the wood smooth under her palms. She looked at the keys, seeing her father's hands in her own. A single note broke the silence, then another. It was a tentative conversation, a bridge being built across the void of loss. In that moment, the blankness in Maya's eyes shifted. She wasn't just playing. She was breathing again, finding the words she didn't know how to speak. The notes grew bolder, more fluid. The rhythm of her grief found a pulse a swaying motion that connected the past to the present. Night after night, the moonlight would crawl across the floor as Maya played. Each melody was a layer of healing, a secret shared with the shadows. Outside, Diane stood in the hallway, her hand resting on the wall. She didn't interrupt. She simply listened, her heart aching with a new kind of hope. The music fades, but the silence that follows is different now. It is no longer heavy. It is a patient waiting for a new dawn to begin. She had no formal training. No lessons, no teacher, no sheet music. Only the memory of her father's hands moving across the keys and the deep, wordless need to find what he had found there. She taught herself entirely by feel, pressing notes slowly, one at a time, learning which combinations felt right and which ones did not, repeating things dozens of times until the mistakes became something else entirely. By the time she was 14, Maya was composing her own pieces, not arranging songs she had heard somewhere, writing music that had never existed before, built note by note from whatever was living inside her chest on any given evening. She kept everything in a spiral notebook, page after page of handwritten notation in pencil, each piece dated, each one carrying the particular quality of something deeply and privately felt. She never played for anyone, never performed, never even left the door open. The music belonged to her and to the four walls of that room, and she had no plans to change that. It was the one space in her entire life where no one was watching and no one needed anything from her at all. Dr. Patricia Voss had been seeing Maya for 3 years by this point. She was a calm and patient woman who worked from a warm office. She had long since understood that Maya's silence was not stubbornness or choice. It was a lock that had clicked shut inside her, and the only way it was ever going to open was from the inside, so she did not push. She sat with Maya week after week and accepted written answers, and occasionally simply sat in silence when that was what the session needed. She was playing a very long game, and she had not stopped believing that one day something would shift. She just had not predicted what form that shift would take. It began on a Thursday afternoon that looked like nothing unusual at all. Maya had stayed after school to use one of the small practice rooms off the music corridor. She slipped in after the last students had cleared out, plugged her headphones into the keyboard so the sound would stay private. She set her notebook open on the music stand and began to play. She had been working for about 20 minutes when, somewhere in the corridor outside, a pair of footsteps slowed and stopped. Mr. Gerald Hooper had been teaching music at Westbrook High for 23 years. He was a patient man with quiet authority that comes not from being loud, but from knowing exactly who you are. He had been heading to the car park when something made him slow near the practice room corridor. Not a sound, but the sight of her. The way she was sitting. The way her body moved slightly with the rhythm of what she was playing. The way her eyes were closed and her face held an expression he had never once seen on her in 2 years of watching her. He stood there for a very long time. He did not knock. He did not go in. He watched a girl he had known as a silent, guarded presence, and saw something in her hands that was real, genuinely and unmistakably real. When he finally walked away, his hands were not entirely steady. He did not sleep well that night. In the silence of the school, Maya continued to play, her secret song finally reaching the heart of another. In the quiet stillness of the early morning, before the school halls fill with noise, a different kind of lesson is being prepared. A simple note, left on a desk. It wasn't a demand, but a quiet invitation to a world Maya had only ever explored in her dreams. When Maya found it, the world seemed to pause. For a girl who usually stayed in the shadows, someone had finally seen her light. Throughout the day, the weight of the paper in her pocket felt like a secret treasure, a promise of something more than just textbooks. Tuesday afternoon arrived. The music room door stood open, a silent welcome into a space where only the melody mattered. No grand introductions were needed. Between two souls who understood music, Words were often the least important part of the conversation. The sessions became a rhythm of their own. Tuesdays and Thursdays were no longer just days. They were chapters of an unspoken symphony. They communicated through the ink of notebooks and the vibration of chords. He guided her hands as she found her courage. 6 weeks passed. The student was ready to reveal the music she had been composing in the silence of her own heart. As he scanned the handwritten notes, Mr. Hooper saw more than just ink on a page. He saw a masterpiece of hidden talent. Then he played. He brought her silent thoughts to life, filling the room with a melody that spoke of longing, hope, and discovery. For the first time, Maya heard the power of her own voice. It was a moment of pure, artistic connection that required no speech. He reached for his notepad once more. His words were a final push, a confirmation that her journey was only just beginning. Maya's response was a simple question, a lingering doubt that had followed her for years. She looked to her mentor for the answer, and with one single word, the world became her stage. Some talents are simply too beautiful to remain in the shadows. The music of an unspoken mentorship had found its way into the light, changing 2 lives forever. Every evening, Maya walks home through the golden hour, her mind a quiet storm of unplayed melodies. She carries the weight of a song that only she knows. At dinner, her mother's voice drifts in the background like a distant radio. Maya is elsewhere, lost in the space between the notes she hasn't yet shared. Sleep is just another stage for her thoughts. She turns a smooth stone in her palm, a physical weight for the words she cannot speak, feeling the cold texture. In the dim sanctuary of the music room, the piano is her only confidant. Here, her original composition, 5th of March, begins to breathe, private and profound. A simple note sits on the bench. The difference between music that lives and music that disappears is whether someone else gets to hear it. A terrifying truth. She tucks the words into her notebook, hiding the challenge between the pages. But the idea has taken root, a small spark of courage flickering against her fear. Mr. Hooper doesn't use many words, but his eyes see everything. He hands her the recital listing, her name printed clearly. Original piano composition, Maya Ellison. Her fingers freeze over the ivory keys. The reality of the stage feels like a sudden storm. She looks at him, searching for an escape that isn't there. "What if I can't do it?" she writes, her hand trembling. His reply is simple. "You already are doing it." The barrier between her and the stage begins to crumble. Then comes the work. Hours of repetition, aching muscles, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. Her back arches in pain, her fingers blur, yet she refuses to stop. "It's what comes after the worst part," she notes on her sheet music. Not happy, just still surviving. The composition is the sound of her own endurance. Mr. Hooper reads her words and nods. There is no pity, only the deep, silent respect of one artist for another. He knows the cost of the art. Back home, the secret is out. Diane stares at the school newsletter, her eyes glistening. She sees the daughter behind the music she's heard through the walls. Diane reaches out, her hand covering Maya's. It's a bridge built of love. Maya turns her hand over, finally anchoring herself to the support she's always had. At school, Lena is a whirlwind of energy. She points toward the auditorium, her face lit with a joy so infectious it breaks through Maya's guarded walls. Maya gives a slow, small nod. It's a promise. Lena grabs her arm, her grip firm and grounding. Maya isn't walking onto that stage alone anymore. The auditorium is vast and silent. Maya sits at the center of the light, taking one final deep breath. The sanctuary is no longer private. It's shared. Tonight, the air at Westbrook is different. The spring chill lingers, but there's a warmth glowing from the auditorium entrance. Families arrive, drawn by the promise of music. Among them is a story 5 years in the making, hidden in the quiet. Programs rustle in the hands of an expectant audience. They've come for the spring concert, unaware of the miracle about to unfold. Behind the heavy velvet curtains, Maya stands in the shadows. Her navy dress is simple, but her heart is a storm. To the world, she is a picture of stillness. Inside, every beat of her heart is a frantic, rhythmic plea for courage. 400 people wait. 400 voices she hasn't joined in years. She takes one slow, deep breath, centering her soul. She remembers the light from a distant Sunday, the vibration of piano notes through the floorboards, the last time she felt whole. Her name is called. The silence she has carried for so long steps out into the blinding glare of the spotlight. 1, 2, 15 steps to the center. The heat of the lights feels like a steadying, warm hand on her shoulders. The ritual is familiar. The bench, the posture, the distance. Here, in this small space, she knows exactly who she is. The room exhales into a collective hush. As her fingers touch the cool ivory, the world outside simply ceases to exist. The first notes fall like raindrops in a parched forest, sparse, delicate, and profoundly honest. Then the depth. Her left hand grounds the melody, weaving a tapestry of grief, persistence, and a quiet, budding hope. Faces in the crowd soften. In this shared moment, her music says everything she couldn't express with words for 5 years. In the third row, her mother watches. Diane doesn't blink, her heart tethered to every rising and falling chord. Friends and mentors, those who waited in the silence with her, now witness the dawn of her return. The tension breaks. Maya's shoulders relax as the music opens up, breathing with a life that cannot be contained anymore. The final note hangs in the air, then fades. A heartbeat of silence, followed by a roar that shakes the rafters. She stands, and for the first time in years, a smile breaks across her face, a light more brilliant than the stage lamps. In the wings, her mother's tears finally fall, an embrace that bridges years of unspoken pain and love. Her circle gathers. No words are needed, yet the atmosphere is thick with a shared, triumphant understanding. Then, the miracle. Her lips move, and a voice soft, rough, but certain whispers, "I'm okay." The weight of half a decade lifts. In that small room, the silence is finally, beautifully, permanently broken. Later, the school stands quiet again. But in the music room, a new melody begins to take shape. Maya isn't just playing anymore. She is humming along, a voice rediscovered, singing her way into a new tomorrow.